I'm Janathan Sunday. I'm from Sierra Leone. I'm assigned to the African Union as a senior stabilization advisor on many issues on the continent. The African Union is based on what we call the African Union Charter. And the fundamental principle of the African Union Charter that is different from the United Nations Charter is the principle of solidarity, African for Africa. In terms of how do we work together, build synergies, solidarity, how can we unite our common strength for our common future. First, to mobilize people around that. So our income inequality, our poverty level on the continent, the disease we face, the terrorism we face, the threat we face, is it possible to eliminate the threat or reduce the threat to our survival and economic growth through level of collaboration, level of partnership, synergies, and the ability to unite our strength. That is only when we cooperate, we collaborate, we work in partnership that we can be able to get a win-win for every citizen on the continent. Especially focus in on students, women, grassroots, youth, that these are sources of hope on the continent. It is very clear that Africa is the youngest, fastest growing continent in terms of economic growth. For example, it's recognized that we have 1.1 billion population on the continent, and 75% of that 1 billion, according to World Bank, ADB, or UN statistics, 75% are youthful population below the age 35. And what does that mean for Africa? It means that we have the potential of a labor force, a functional labor force. But the challenge we have on the continent, we should all ask ourselves, and that is the discussion which I float around, is that, is this economic growth, has it translated into the benefit of our people? Has the poverty level reduced dramatically among our people? Is the threat, for example, social tensions, is the threat of international terrorism, transnational organized crime, economic crime, money, threats that influence, or threats such as global health crisis like we've experienced, Ebola, are they still on the continent? In other words, the basic question is, we should all ask ourselves, how much is this economic growth that we all recognize in the continent has been able to translate to reduce income inequality between the rich and the poor? That's the dilemma. Because I will tell you, by 2011, 2012, the GDP per capita, for example, we had 16.3% because of natural resource abundance, the sale of rutile, bauxite, and the real sector was keeping up. But the question we all ask is, that money, that revenue that has been generated from natural resources like rutile, has it made any impact on the life of the majority of Sierra Leoneans? Do we have an inclusive political culture in that country? Is our economic institution, are they inclusive to help translate the benefit from macroeconomic growth, from the sale of our natural resources, into improving economic prosperity of our people? That's the dilemma. Recently, the anti-corruption and the internal audit report in my country, for example, I claimed that we had still $40 million to be accounted for through Ebola Trust Fund. So you ask yourself, 40 million of taxpayers' money from donors in terms of aid, how effective was that money for Ebola support has been in terms of meeting the poor, reducing the risks of Ebola? And that's the dilemma because of corruption. So these are things we have to deal with. And I think fundamentally it is because the nature of our democratic and political and economic institutions are built on extraction. nepotism, rather than inclusive political and economic institutions that care for the poor, like I said, that can allow the poor to have credit opportunities, whether through commercial banks, whether through cooperative societies and all of that. And some of the reasons I see the challenges we have, both structural and operational challenges to overcome that income inequality, poverty, is that there's time for us to reflect a little bit. Those of us who have worked, especially in East Africa and Horn of Africa, for West Africa, to look at what opportunities are there within East Africa and the Horn of Africa. The region is quite advanced in terms of a number of economic benefit. We tend to be supporting more economic growth, privatization activities, focusing on urban cities. So what you see is there's rural-urban migration of the youth. And once they concentrate in the urban settlement, then its implication is that increased crime rate, increased level of de-radicalization, increased level of that. So at what point do we ensure that local communities within the political economy of local communities too, where we want them to stay, so that you minimize the aspect of rural and urban migration? We support infrastructure development, we support credit opportunities, medium to small enterprise SMEs. Then step by step we will move, the continent can come together. If there's one area we, in the process of translating the economic growth into transformation, is the area of trade and investment. It's very clear that East and Horn of Africa is far advanced than in West Africa. But in order for this to happen, transfer of knowledge, transfer of skills enhancement, and investment opportunity, especially foreign direct investment from East Horn of Africa to West Africa. One of the challenges we have are immigration regulations, visas, flight. So road network, within the principle of economic integration, aviation, more flights, commonality, and then cutting down the artificial barriers on visa requirement, immigration opportunities. And that is one area, for example, West Africa is quite advanced now in terms of the protocol on free movement of goods and services, such that you can leave today Sierra Leone with your passport and move along the 15 member states in West Africa without no hindrance. We have seen the process of developing common currency among those member states. So when you look at IGAD, you look at ECOWAS, you look at SADC, there's increased efforts to promote economic reintegration. But the challenge we have is the movement. Are there free movement of goods and services? What are the tariff rates, the common tariff rates? Can you easily secure a visa in less than 1 week or two to go across border to Tanzania, to South Africa? So those are some of the structural challenges I think we, in the spirit of solidarity, we need to start thinking about that. And I also believe that even the aspect of terrorism needs cooperation and collaboration. It needs the principle of solidarity. We have seen the role of non-state armed groups popping on the continent, destabilizing the continent. And that is not good in terms of risks and uncertainty for foreign direct investors to flow cash on the continent. And what we intend to do, meaning that enhancing training and skill, South-South cooperation and exchange visits is one way to go through this. And I also think we also need to attract, students in particular. Why? Me and you believe that part of the political leadership which we desperately need on the continent, that it is through a new generation of political leadership, creating that transitional passage for the youth through their engagement in improving political culture on the continent can help. Because it is, all of us today are directors, we are managers in the UN, the World Bank, or back home, ministers and that, because we started our student politics and leadership skills back at the university days, back in schools. So at what point that a campaign for unity team can continue to support student debates, university debate, college debate, so that they will imbibe, once you integrate this into student union politics, then it becomes something that will project building the intellectual and human capital for the future in terms of improving the political culture on the basic principles of unity, reconciliation, and solidarity. Our emphasis is, it is not about you, it is not about me, but it is at our generation and the generation yet unborn. Let us unite now and make Sierra Leone a better place and the African continent as a beacon of hope.